Ever wondered how sails are made, raced and refined by the pros? We visit a century-old loft in Lunenburg, Nova Scotia, where tradition meets cutting-edge tech. Our guest, Drew Mitchell, pro sailor, sailmaker, and owner of North Sails Atlantic, takes us from blue nose classics to high-performance sails and shares how passion can become a career in the sailing world.
So Drew, if I took some notes correctly, we start like racing, not racing, but sailing when you're 8 years old, more or less like that.
Yep, exactly.
Coaching and race it for probably more than 15 years or 20 years or something like that.
Yeah, since I was 8. Yeah, exactly.
So man, championship, you won the 430 North Americans and the Melges 40 as well for the Pacific. You've been like working as a sailor as well as entrepreneur, right? So you have like sailing in your life since you're probably a kid.
Yeah, no, exactly. I've been, I think I did a 6 month stint working at the Royal Bank, and that really wasn't for me. So I went through school, then did some college, and then I've basically been a sailmaker since I graduated.
And I found that you wrote some articles too. And one of the interviews, I don't remember if you asked the question or somebody asked you the question. I have to dream about a boat I would like to have.
Yep.
Which boat would that be?
You know, to tell you the truth, I'm pretty lucky to have a close friend, Aaron Sonos, would be probably a very nice fast blue nose. That class is very special to me, and I've always enjoyed it. And it's a local class here, and based in Chester, Nova Scotia. There is a fleet up in Armdale, but I think the Blue Nose is a nice classic vessel, but still has a nice racing culture within the fleet. So that's, you know, I hope to always either be racing on a Blue Nose or owning one my entire life.
And Blue Nose is very famous here in Nova Scotia, right? There's a tradition of Blue Nose here.
Yes.
In Nova Scotia.
Yeah, it's basically, the class is only based here in Nova Scotia. The boats were built or started getting built here in Mahone Bay. You do find them sprinkled around North America. Like I think I found one in the Okanagan. Someone the other day was telling me, I was down in Annapolis, they said that there was one down there. But mostly those are used for day sailors, and that's kind of what they were traditionally for. But just like any class, it doesn't matter what it is. As soon as you get a few of them on the water next to each other, they start racing.
So 2 words just ring the bell for me. Racing.
Yep.
Sailors.
Yep.
If you are a racer, so you chose Blue Nose.
Yep.
Would you choose something different if you did not have all this background in racing and everything else?
Well, that's a good question. I think, I think a performance boat that would go, sail fast and efficiently, but also be comfortable. I think, especially in Canada, I lived a lot. I lived on the West Coast for a while, running North Sails Vancouver, and we do a lot of distance races out there, and it's always fun to go really fast. But when the conditions are tough and the weather is cold and maybe a little wet, it's always nice to be on a pretty comfortable boat. So if I wasn't so much a racer, I'd probably pick a cruising boat, but that kind of had like the speed of a racer. So it might be more comfortable, might be slightly slower because you have more weight on it due to cushions and a few other amenities. But at the same time, in breeze and in most conditions, it could probably perform like a racing boat. And which one, that would probably take me a little while to figure out. Maybe even like, I worked with a family out west called the Gibbons who had a custom cold molded wooden boat. And it had a carbon rig, and we raced it around, but it traditionally was a cruiser that they built to sail around the South Pacific. So something along those lines. If I ever did have that budget, I'd probably try to replicate something like that.
That's fantastic, because 2 of your answers are leaning to wooden boats, like the same thing for Blue Nose.
Yep.
And the second option you just gave us. Wooden boats is a lot of work, man.
Yeah, they
Let's
certainly
be honest.
are. Yeah.
Not only like to keep the boat running correctly,
Yeah.
but to keep the boat beautiful as well. So
Oh,
all
exactly.
the varnishing and everything else. So it's
Yeah.
a passion, right?
It's a total passion. I think that might come from my East Coast roots. Saying that, I do like the performance of fiberglass boats and to the next level, carbon vessels. I think if you're up at the upper echelon of racing where you need that extra weight savings and performance in terms of flex and whatnot, getting into a carbon boat is very important, and those are very fun boats to sail.
So silly question about the way you feel the things or see the things. So you have like the senses in each of us.
Yep.
Vision, like listening, you can just taste the things, you can touch the things.
Yep.
For you as a competitor, which one is important for you to use it? Like, is the vision of the water, you know, you can.
I think the vision. I think a lot of the time, sailing has so many variables, and I think it's one of the neatest sports. And the reason for that is there's a bunch of variables that are completely uncontrolled by you, and you have to try to manage them and kind of guess or try to figure out what those uncontrolled variables are going to do that day.
Cool.
So I think sight and feel are two things that you need to have. In terms of feel, no one has ever. I got this line from a gentleman I was sailing with last week, and no one's ever born with the sailing ability. Yep. You have to get out there and you have to learn it. And the only way you can do that is to get on the water and spend time on the water. You can't learn that by staring at a computer and watching sailing. But then also visually, you need to be able to see the wind, see the waves, and also if you're into a tactical situation with another boat, visually see and figure out the timing that needs to happen to make sure that you can take advantage of your tactical situation. So I think feel and visual are two things. And when you have someone that can feel a boat, usually you push them towards the back of the boat, maybe close to a driver. And if you have someone that's really good at visual, they might be like a main sheet / tactician. And you can kind of figure that out pretty quickly when you meet someone, you get on the water with them, if they're either a feel or a visual person. And having both is a pretty cool concept, but yeah.
It's so nice that this complements something I heard in other sailors as well, in Bedford Basin, talk about when you do cruising in the same boat for a while. Even the sounds of the boat, you know that something is right or wrong with the boat, even though you don't see it.
Yes.
You listen to something, so this sound is not normal for this kind of boat. So you learn about the boat as soon as you try this more often.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I've had a couple experiences like that. One time we were sailing down the west coast of Vancouver Island, and I could hear this little tiny knocking, and no one else. I could almost just feel it in my bunk, and no one else really believed me. And then once we finished our leg, which is about 140 nautical miles, we backed down, and we had a piece of kelp caught on our drive shaft, or maybe on the propeller. The propeller should have been closed, but yeah. So I sailed on this boat a lot, and it was just a little bit of a feel and a little bit of a sound, and it was just different than what I was used to. And I didn't have too many people believing me at the moment, but once the proof came out, it was a little bit of a relief to me because I thought I might have been going crazy. But yeah, it kind of as you get used to a boat, you kind of get the sound and the feel of how it should work. And as soon as the harmonics go off a little bit, or the feel of the boat doesn't feel the same, something's changed.
How many people were with you in that boat?
That vessel, we usually sailed with six to eight people. So it was a full team effort for sure. So
you are the stubborn one telling 7 people that there's something wrong. Everybody say, don't get wrong, let's go for that.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other thing, there is that little thing affecting us enough to put your sails down and try to stop it and then keep going. Saying that on those longer races, I'd say 95 to 99% of the time it's probably worthwhile slowing the boat down and preventing anything on your foils or on your propeller or drive shaft and get that off, because you make up even a 0.1 or 0.2 over 24 hours is going to make up that little bit of time that you stop to take it off.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So I'd like to move towards the business side of sailing as well.
Of course.
I have lots of young people here in Nova Scotia, probably listening to this in other places as well, that would like to be part of the sailing industry in some ways.
Yep.
You told me about the bank experience you had before.
Yeah.
And I was trying to match that one with the Sail GP that's coming back to Nova Scotia.
Mm-hmm.
So try to connect both together now. I'm a young guy or young girl, want to go and learn about sailing in the sailing industry. So can you tell me something about local examples you can have, or maybe your experiences, how I can start with this?
Yeah, so I think the way that I would start is a lot of younger sailors, if you are under the age of 18, start sailing in junior sailing. Okay. And I believe, and this was my experience, and I think almost everyone I've spoken to that has had the same job as me, is teaching sailing at a yacht club or a summer sailing school is probably the best summer job you can have. It's a lot of fun. You're on the water all day. you're coaching the next generation of sailors. You're helping out with the grassroots of the sport. So there's a lot, you're kind of giving back a little bit at the same time, making enough money to head off to college or maybe put a little money away in high school in the bank account. And then moving past that, I would say the next kind of stepping stone after, maybe coaching at a junior sailing level is maybe something you want to move on past. There's different ways you get involved in the industry, and I would say the first way, and it's something that's been relatively new, is this Sail GP Inspire that my buddy Augie Ferrero is kind of heading right now. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to fill the gap between, a junior sailor or a junior racer, amateur racer, and then, getting into professional sailing. And there's usually a gap between 17 through kind of 30 kind of deal, where you see a lot of people either doing Olympic campaigns, or you see, and those are very expensive. You need a lot of support and time. Your life kind of goes on hold for those. And then other people actually have to go and get a real job and go into the workforce, and that, takes up a lot of their time. And in North America, we have limited holidays usually when you first start off. So it's very tough if you only get 2 weeks off a year. Are you going to decide you want to spend all 2 weeks on a sailboat sailing? I know some people that do, but other people probably tend to maybe do other things, go traveling and whatnot. So I think there's some time restriction there in terms of job and personal life. So I think Sail GP Inspire program really kind of tries to merge that gap. And what they do is they help young, inspiring sailing athletes kind of go in and see what's going on at that Grand Prix level. So they'll bring you in, you can become, I'm not 100% sure examples, but basically you go in and help as almost like you're part of one of the Sail GP teams, whether if you're helping rig, you're helping get the bases set up, just there, helping the production of the whole Sail GP. And that kind of gives you an inside look of how everything's happening, what's going on, and the biggest thing is connections. So if you're a sailor, or if you're a professional sailor, or if you're in the industry, it's about, in almost any industry, it's about who you know. So when you get into these positions of hanging out in Sail GP sheds, and there's professional sailors around, there's professional riggers, there's professional management, there's marketing, whatever your little niches that you think you might want to get into, I'm sure you would have a professional in that situation involved in the sport of sailing that you could kind of communicate to, get to know, and kind of let them know that you'd be interested in possibly doing something like they are in the future, and how they got there, and what your path might look like to get there. So I think that's pretty neat that they've done that. I think, as I said, Olympic sailing is an awesome pinnacle of dinghy sailing, but that's not the only option out there. So there's some people that are either, not fit for a dinghy, or don't have the skill in the dinghy, but once they get into keelboat racing, they're a little bit more efficient at it, or a little bit better at it, or maybe even enjoy it more than they did dinghy sailing. So there's, it's just opening a different pathway for people to continue sailing and stay in the sport, and maybe even land a job in the sport. So it's very neat.
I'd like to explore this rabbit hole a little bit with you about these pathways.
Yep.
And specialties, because you raised about, you can be a rigger, you can be a sailmaker. You're a good example of that. You don't have to be just specialty in racing, as an example. And seeing Sail GP is still in the same topic, they have so much technology involved in that now. So they have too many data points that you can use with technology, AI, to analyze that one. So it's a new thing in the sailing industry too. And talking about technology as well. In your case, do you see technology changing something even in your area?
Yeah, big time. I think technology has really started hitting the international racing circuit with there's like all boats usually have a little bit of a computer system going now, and so Vacros and previously Sailmon, even on a boat like a J70 or a Blue Nose or something, you can put it on there, and you can actually download your whole day right onto your phone. They're actually starting to do virtual kind of race committee, so they have the mark bots. So those are marks that are run by tiny little electric motors that are sent by GPS signal to different locations. So it's very easy to change your race course and also manage your race course, because usually they'll have wind sensors on them. So the mark will tell you what the wind is, what the wind direction is, and what the speed is, and you can actually use something like an iPad to determine how long you want your race course and where you want the marks to be. On top of that, now they're actually putting these electronics on the pin end and the start of the race committee. So now, and before, previously with these starting boxes, you call them, these computers on your boat, these sailing computers, you'd have to go up to the starting, the race committee, and you'd have to ping it and kind of put a GPS position, then go down to the pin, and then the computer would kind of analyze the line to you and give you meters to that location. But now they're actually doing all that on the computer on the race committee boat. So it's actually organizing the line for you and determining where it is. So instead of you going to do that, and there's some error factor there, they're actually putting that right into your computer system, downloading it. All the computers are hooked onto that. So the starting line will actually be shown, your distance to the starting line will be shown on the computer without you having to ping anything.
Oh, that's cool.
And then also the information is being sent directly to the computer. So instead of having, when all the boats start, instead of having an over early, it will turn red, and that means you have to turn around and restart. So I was sailing in the J24 World Championships where this program was being used by Vaqueros. It's called Race Sense. I'm a big supporter of it. We had 45 something boats there, and I think 27 boats were over early one race. And normally you'd have a general recall and you'd have to restart. Where 27 boats, machines just turn red, and whatever the other 25, 27 went upwind. So that's kind of neat. And the good thing about that is in some venues where it's a little tricky to get racing off in bigger fleets, you actually don't get as many general recalls. So you're going to have more efficiency of your racing. So that regatta was in a light air venue with a lot of current, and the wind ended up coming in the afternoon. And we got 9 races off in the 10-race series. But if we didn't have the race sense, we probably would have only got 4 or 5 races off due to the amount of probably general recalls that we would have had to have. So it's I think it's advancing the technology. And then all the data points and all your data, you can go back and analyze it with, you have a Vaqueros on your boat, I have a Vaqueros, we can download it and see our pass. And then you can actually, if you have videotape, you can actually log in the videotape. And so once you hit the corner, the video will pop up in the side of the screen and it will show you rounding the mark. So for like a coaching, data analysts, all this technology is really helping the coaches and the sailors kind of learn about efficiency and what was actually going on the race course.
I like to keep the same topic, but connecting what you told me before about skills, when you can listen something or boat, so that's something you learn when you are in a boat for a while with technology. So the blog is more or less about how to apply some of your knowledge and skills, even though you are not from the sailing industry, into the sailing industry. So like your experience in the banking or experience like training, how to apply those skills in the sailing industry? Is there something you can transfer quickly?
Like I was more of just a teller at the bank, to be honest. So I don't know if I could translate too much, but
people, right,
I dealt with people. I think the biggest thing that I could translate, and it was once I got out of the laser, was a lot of my sports outside of sailing were hockey and lacrosse, and it was a real team sport. And then once I started getting into professional sailing, where you're involved with a team, I think a lot of the things I learned as a child about how to be a good teammate and be a leader and involve myself with the team and work with different people and different dynamics and that type of stuff. I think I brought I learned a lot as a child and as a youth athlete playing those sports with 14 other teammates. On a sailboat, it's usually more like 3 to 8 more teammates, but I think I brought a lot of those teammate skills to my sailing, which I think has really helped out a lot.
It's so good because I remember your example, leasing something, 8 guys in a small boat for 140 nautical miles.
Yeah.
If you don't know how to deal with people, after the first day, you want to kill each other. Like it's difficult to stay in a small compartment competing with 7 other guys.
Oh yeah, no, and on the West Coast they have races out to Hawaii, so I've been on a boat for 14 days at a time. So that's, you got to make sure on those distance races, you got to make sure that you know who you're going sailing with, and you got to make sure you get along with them, because it could be a long day or it could be a long 2 weeks. And I think a lot of those experiences, and you're out there to try to win the race, but a lot of the memories are made with the people that you sail with.
And Drew, let's be honest, when you're listening to something like that, you think about a cruising, a beautiful spot. Talk about racing. At least you just sleep in a hammock, you pee in a bucket, you're probably eating like cold food all the time, everything shaking. Like it's not exactly a comfort cruise.
No, it's not. Well, I did one on a TP52, the Transpac, and that was sleeping in a bunk and eating what's it called, like pre-made, like you put water in it, what they call it. No, that was, but at the same time we were sailing a really neat boat and we were going fast, and I really enjoyed that. Another time I actually did it on a bit of a cruiser, Beneteau 50 Oceanus, and even though it had all the amenities and was very comfortable, I don't know if you're racing a boat and trying to get from point to point, I don't think there's any boat that you could be on for 2 weeks that's going to be comfortable no matter what's on it. Things get wet. It's just, the boat's heeling over. It's just, you'd think like a queen bed would be great, but actually, you put a lee cloth on a queen bed and you tack, you roll over like twice, and then you smoke the lee cloth. So my preference would be, and it's funny, in terms of, I felt more comfortable up in my bunk on a TP52 than I did in a queen-size bed with a lee cloth on a Beneteau Oceanus.
That's a very nice feedback, man.
Yeah.
So I'd like to move a little bit about your experiences as an entrepreneur. So I'm talking about the business side of the North Sails.
Yep.
So man, like you're working here, you told me this building is 1902, right? So it's
1901.
Like
1901,
so
yeah. I might have said two. I just double checked before you came. So
even though it's an old building,
lots
of experience here. I think since the beginning was a loft for sails, right?
Yep. Yeah, I think at one point it might have switched off, but it's been a sail off for 120 years.
And you can see here behind you can smell sail, you can see the things here all the time.
Yep.
So I know that's a silly question, but did you feel a difference working here in an old building with all the experiences instead of working in a new loft? They don't have everything fresh, but without these.
Yeah, there's definitely some history to this, and I'm lucky as well. The loft I worked in Vancouver, it wasn't built in 1901, and it wasn't, downtown Lunenburg in a World Heritage site, but it was still a bit of an older loft, and that's kind of the way that I've always worked. So it's a little bit more traditional. It might not look as neat. Probably as tidy or as many cool, nice machines as some of the new traditional or newer lofts. But I find when you come into this loft, it's got a bit of flavor to it and heritage, for sure. And this used to be a North Sails manufacturing facility. It was Shore Sails, not Shore Sails. It was Sable Sails. My apologies. So Sable Sails, Sandy McMillan, Andreas Yosnian, and Glenn Dexter own Sable Sails, and then North Sails, as they normally do, if they find a young group of sailors or a young sailor that also is good at sailing, but is also a fairly good sailmaker, they usually try to work with them on sailing under the North Sails brand. So that's kind of what happened with Sandy, Andreas, and Glenn. I'm not 200. I know Glenn ended up taking off, and I think he ended up going back to law school or maybe becoming a lawyer after his sailing stuff. Sandy ended up taking care of the loft here, and then Andreas went off to run the manufacturing facility for North Sails in Milford, Connecticut, as well as a lot of America's Cup campaigns and whatnot.
But still in the business, right?
Still in the business. So then, that's kind of the history of the loft. And Sandy has done a great job running this for a long time. And I was actually an employee of North Sails in Vancouver, where this loft I actually own myself. So we still sell North Sails, and we are a North Sails loft, just a little bit different. I have to pay for the lights to be turned on, and the heat in the winter. So a little bit different. There's a little bit of learning curve there, but with Sandy's help and the support of my service team downstairs, it's been a pretty turnkey operation coming in here.
So I want to explore your experience with Sailmaker as well.
Yep.
So basic things about, can you share with us any kind of memorable experience or fun experience you had with a client when they call you and say, I need a sale, or something that happened after that? How was the briefing? How was the result? So
Yeah, so it's pretty neat now. So just to give you an example of how like a sales process would work is, so say you need a new mainsail for your boat, okay? Or maybe let's say a mainsail and a headsail. You want to buy an upwind package from me. So I'll actually talk to you about what type of sailing you plan on doing.
Cool.
Okay, and let's say you're like, I want to go be the best racer at Bedford Basin Yacht Club. This year I want to win what's the cup called at the end of the year again?
the Dungeon Cup.
The Dungeon. I want to win the Dungeon Cup, and I'm like, all right, okay. So these are the products. These are racing products. You know, what's your budget look like? You know, we could go with the upper echelon, and North Sails has an advantage in terms of product relative to any other sail manufacturer. You could pick that. We also have a couple other more cost-effective racing products. So we'd kind of figure out where your budget is and what type of cloth we want to use. Then I would head down to your boat. Okay, and I would actually measure your boat. And you would think a measurement would be like 5 or 6 measurements. I might measure the luff and your mast and your boom and your forestay and then take off. It's actually a pretty intricate process. I actually probably take, if we did a full boat measurement, it'd probably take me an hour and a half to 2 hours, and I'd probably take close to 80 measurements of the boat. And what I do is I actually take those and I download it into a program that sends a 3D model, it's like a CAD program, a 3D model of what I just built, or what I just measured, and we basically build like a sail plan of your boat. I use those measurements once I see that to kind of size the sail out and kind of pick the sail options. So things like sliders and like headboard, roach size, size of the head sail, where the clew's going to sit, all those type of things, tack back. But then past that, we kind of want to figure out what you're going to be using, like what type of wind conditions and sea state conditions you're going to sail in. So if you were sailing out of St. Francis Yacht Club over in the Bay Area, San Francisco, we'd probably be building you different sails than we would for the flat water, light to medium air Bedford Basin.
Yeah, because it gets there.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're like, I'm planning to hang out in Bedford Basin, this is my primary sailing place. So we'd actually put that into the design aspect of the sails. And then we'd actually size the sails out. I would work with the designer on sizing the sails out with all the measurements I took. Once that's completed, I finish the details, like put in the sail number, maybe color a sail. Sometimes sails, you have color options. Black's the new orange, but sometimes there's different sail color options. Some other finishing details I might need to ask you. And then it's completely customized. So the nice thing about these custom sails, and this is for a boat that's not one design, these custom sails are completely custom to you and the boat that you have, okay, and the conditions you sail in. Then once we do that, it goes into design. So the designer takes all that information, designs the sails, and we have the highest, we have the best design suite program in the world. So that it's been basically, we've used all the previous designs and successes we've had with previous designs, and we kind of integrate that into what you're looking for. So we have different molds for a light medium Genoa relative to a medium Genoa, to a heavy a jib and heavy air flat water. So we have all these different kind of successes that we've had with certain shapes that we kind of use to implement on a sail that you need for certain conditions. That goes into design, it goes into production. The production probably takes roughly a month. So I'd say the design process takes about 2 weeks. Production takes about a month, and then it gets shipped from our manufacturing facility. We have manufacturing facilities globally. It gets shipped to our manufacturing facility back to Canada. Sail shows up here at the loft. I pull it out. I check all your battens. I look at all the corners. I check it over, make sure the sail number's right. Make sure it has 3 corners or maybe 4 if it's a square top. And then I usually, if I can, and I have the time and you're local, I usually set up a time to get to the boat, put the sail on, and possibly if the day works out in terms of weather, get on the water and show you how to set the sail up and work with it. So that's basically right from the starting process of you saying, hey Drew, I would like to get a new set of sails, and this is what my goals are with these new set of sails, to installing the sails and getting the sails on the boat. And then past that, not only then I like to get to the boat to make sure the sails fit properly. You're guaranteed the sail's going to fit and work as advertised. But you also, with North Sails, the nice thing is you get 1 year free sail care and repair.
Oh,
So
that's
for the
cool.
first 12 months, you have the sail. If you ever want to bring it to the loft and have us check it over, it's completely, we take care of you. So once you put your deposit down after our initial quoting and order process, you are guaranteed a set of sails that are going to work and fit, and for the first 12 months, there's going to be no cost to you.
So I want to keep in the back of my mind the
Yep.
question about maintenance, because something I'm curious about.
Yep.
But to follow the path you just gave me from the beginning to the end.
Yep.
Let's put some colors in some of those paths.
Yep.
I'm talking about an outsider, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, of course.
When I saw sail the first time and I bought my boat, I thought, it's a piece of cloth.
Yeah.
Now you can explain me all the materials and the way that's designed. And you discussed before start recording
Yeah.
about even sometimes I have 2 boats, same kind. In 20 years, everybody makes some change. So
Yeah.
that's why the measurement is so important.
Oh, exactly.
Because they are not exact, even in one design. Sometimes, technically one design was supposed to be exactly the same.
Yep.
But in an old boat, it's nice to check just in case, right?
100%. No, especially like in Canada, we tend to have older vessels. Like, it's not like hanging around.
Not only in Canada.
Yeah. Well, hanging out in Europe, you might, and you might be watching our North Sails Instagram feed and stuff like that, and you'll see a lot of new fresh boats.
Yeah.
But if you go down to a local yacht club in Nova Scotia, the boats are probably on average between 20 and 35 years old.
Cool.
Saying that, people like to take care of them, but at the same time, yes, as boats change hands, shackles change, blocks change. I've even seen as far as masts have changed. So he's like, I own a Ericsson 35, and I was like, oh, how long have you owned it? I just bought it. Well, and then they're like, I own the Mark III. It's Mark III. Your North Sails, can't you just build me a new mainsail? And I'm like, hey man, can we just throw measuring tape up your mast just to make sure? I had one instance where probably the guy either ran into a bridge or lost the mast. So the mast, and when you lose a mast, chances are you're not going to get a new one fabricated, especially for an older boat in Canada.
Yep.
So you're probably going to talk to the local marina, like South Shore Marine probably has an extra couple masts kicking around. Call Sean up, say, hey Sean, I had a 49-foot mast. Do you have anything close to that? He said, oh yeah, I got this 47-foot mast, same width, probably work for you. You okay with that? How much? Yeah, okay, let's plug that in. So then, so you see those, or booms, even booms change all the time. And sometimes it's not because the mast broke or the boom broke. It's maybe I want a little bit longer boom for more performance.
Yeah.
Or I want a smaller boom because it kept hitting my crew members in the head. And I like to be out there having, exactly. I like to be out there having cocktails all day, and I want to make sure I don't get hit in the head. So things change on boats, and getting to the boat myself and the measurements aren't extremely difficult if you know how to hold a tape measure. Getting down there and just confirming that you still have the same mast on the boat, still the same boat, and just check a couple of the attachments. It just saves a lot of time. Our sailing season is really short here in Nova Scotia, so when you get a new sail, having it arrive and having it fit, well and at least usable is very important.
So we don't have to go too deep in details, but you told me about materials as well before talking about maintenance.
Yep.
So that different materials, like if I'm a racer or I'm a cruiser, so I can go a Dacron as an example. Can you give me an example of the basic materials you have for sail?
Yeah, so you start with Dacron, and you could race with Dacron, and some classes actually limit the fibers that are used in there just to stop a bit of an arms race.
Okay.
So it's similar like the Blue Nose class or the J70 class, they strictly only allow woven polyester, which is known as Dacron. Then when you get, Dacron is the most common cruising cloth as well. So Dacron's very tough, but it is a woven cloth, so it does stretch, and it is polyester. So it is probably the most, it's the stretchiest fiber we use in sailmaking.
Okay.
The next step up would be a laminate, and then we have laminate in terms of cruising as well as racing. So a laminate cruising cloth would usually have a taffet on the outside, which is a little bit durable, and you'd usually put taffet actually on both sides of the sail, and then you'd probably sometimes have a high modulus fiber in the middle of the sail for load retention, shape retention, and then a racing one would probably just have mylar on the outside. So it's a little bit lighter than, the cruising cloth a lot of the time will have lower modulus fibers, still a high modulus, but lower than like a carbon or Kevlar. They might use like a Dyneema
Okay.
fiber in there. And then when you get into the racing side, you're probably looking at like an Aramid, a Technora, or even a carbon fiber. And it's usually sandwiched between two pieces of Mylar. So you go from woven product to a laminate product, and now we're actually building composite products. So a composite sail, which is known as our 3DI. So what we've done is, if you've seen all the racing sails with all the fibers in them,
Yep.
what we've actually done is we've unwound the fibers. And then what was happening was our Mylar was the failure point of those sails. The Mylar would just break down. It was basically just holding the fibers together, and it was the weak point of the sail. So what we did is we actually, in the lamination process, so there's glue in the lamination process, so there was a bit of a shelf life with the sails. They were faster, they were lighter, but they'd last you half as time, and they were twice as much. So as a salesman, it was a bit of a tough sell.
But man, if you can talk about Mylar.
Yeah.
Mylar, I saw in the CGT, it looks like a plastic that you just put in your food or something like that. It's a
Yes,
very thin plastic.
very thin piece of plastic. So it's not very durable. Durability goes out the door. What you're looking at is for weight savings. You're not looking for durability. So that's someone coming to me saying, I'm looking to sail, like this was probably 15 years ago, I'm looking to win the Dungeon Cup. I want this sail for 2 years. I would say Mylar sail is the way to go. As light as possible, probably could put carbon fibers in there. You know, if you said I want to last 5 seasons, we might put half a side of taffeta on one side to add durability. We'd probably use Aramid or Technora fibers, maybe some Dyneema or some Ultrax, as we call it, fiber inside. A little bit more durable in terms of flex. It doesn't break as much as quickly as carbon does. It's not as sharp when it breaks. And then, so what we've done is with the old race sails that you see, and there's still some on the market that are laminate and they have the fibers in there. We unwound the fibers, we pre-pregged them with glue, and then we made single ply filament tapes. So a tape is about this long, and basically it's single ply filament. There's probably 1,000 filaments laid right next to each other. Then that goes through a bit of an oven and sets the glue. And then we start, and where you'd see all the load fibers, like say from the head to the tack and the foot, we actually run tapes now.
The reinforcement for the car.
All the way through. So you run the foot load, the tapes, you run the luff tapes, and eventually you start building the sail up. So instead of, on a sail, on the corners, you'd put patches to reinforce it. We'd actually just run more tapes along the corners. So it's actually built up interiorly. So
is that a manual process or is it a machine?
No, this is a machine on a 2D surface. So we're actually doing this on a 2D surface. So in the corners, you could actually run as much as like 300 like single ply filament tapes. And then in the middle of the sail, you can run as little as 6. So you could have the sail built up in the corners for strength and then going into the middle. So a normal sail, the sail's all the same weight or you'll have one panel a little bit lighter. But with a 3DI sail, it's built just like a boat would, where in the corners of the high load areas, you have lots of material. And then in the middle of the sail, you have a little less material where the high load spots.
Oh, so you keep it light.
Yeah, to keep it light and also to integrate where the loads are.
I get it.
And then once they build the sail, it looks well, especially with the black ones, it almost looks like a tarp, and it's on a 2D surface. And then we actually take it. So there's these tapes have made basically a triangle now, okay? And they've run all the tapes into different load patterns of how the sail, they think the sail is going to be loaded up. Then they put on a 3D mold. So they have these tables with jacks underneath them, and the jacks start pumping up. Once the computer sends the image of the exact 3D shape that the sail is going to fly, the sail gets laid over, it gets put in a vacuum sealed bag, and then a giant heater goes over and resets that glue and molds the sail to the exact shape that the sail is going to fly in your boat. Pretty neat. Then once it's done that, we take it off the mold. It cures for about 3 to 6 days, 7 days. And then once it's done, it gets put the headboard on, put all the luff slides, finish the sail. But you don't have to, there's no seams on the sail. It's completely one piece, customly 3D molded to the shape that's going to fly in your boat. So that is the evolution of our 3D. There was 3DL, which was the Mylar version of the one-piece sail. Now we're into 3DI, which is a fully composite. So it's 70% fibers, 30% resin.
So if I got this correct.
Yeah.
And this is for everybody who's listening to you.
Yeah.
So in the end, when you ask for a new sales,
Yep.
and you see the cost for that,
Yep.
not because it's just a bad chip, put it together.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
a lot of effort in that.
A lot of effort, a lot of technology, a lot of R&D. But the nice thing about 3DI is there's no Mylar. So there's no delamination and there's no Mylar to break down. So the sails actually last longer. So in theory, they're in terms of they're engineered better because the fibers are now split up into single filaments. So you could have, say we have 1,000 single ply filaments laying next to each other. You could have 30% of them broken down, but you still have 70% of them working. Where if on a string sail, if your fiber breaks, the load is discontinued at that broken spot.
And that's always one of the big problems with laminated sails.
Yes.
That's that's going to be fun for probably 5 years, or depends on your
Yeah.
way to use it.
Yep.
Probably more than that.
Yeah,
But compared with Dacron, that it's going to be longer, but the stretch not going to be so good in performance, right?
exactly.
So if that way you solve the problem with the lamination.
Solve the problem with delam. There is no lamination during that process, and on top of that, with the fibers, with no mylar, the sails actually last longer. So as I said
really
before, the sails were lighter, faster, but they're gonna last half as long, and they're gonna be twice as much. Now the 3DI, they're lighter, faster, and stronger, and more durable. So it's actually better because you're going to get, if you look at a 3DI sail relative to any other race sail, you're probably going to get more days per dollar or more use per dollar on a 3DI sail than you would on any laminate sail. You're going to pay a premium at the purchase time,
Okay.
but the sail is going to last longer than your traditional laminate sail, and it's also going to be more durable and higher performing. So if you think about it like an investment for your sailboat, it's pretty hard, unless the budget's not there, and sometimes that's the case. It's pretty hard to kind of back away from 3DI because if you're looking for a long-term investment and performance is something that you aspire for in your sail, then 3DI is a very good option for you to go with. And then going further into this, the kind of neat thing is we've actually started adapting our fibers that we're using in the 3DI sails for the application. So we're actually building cruising sails out of 3DI.
Well, you answered my question next because I was thinking about racing. But
Yep.
this material is good for cruising as well.
Well, it depends on what fiber you use. So now we're building 3D molded 3DI Dacron sails. So instead of using Spectra, Dyneema, Kevlar, and carbon, so now we're doing polyester. And then so now we have a full line. So if you said, I've got a 30-foot day sailor, I love technology, this 3DI stuff is so cool, we'd go with an all Dacron. Say you had a 70-foot cruiser, you love the 3DI, you're going across an ocean, you want durability, you get probably Dacron and a blend in those tapes, a blend of Dyneema and polyester. Then if I'm a club racer, I really like club racing, I've got this 30-foot, I've got an Olsen 30, I want a new head sail, I want 3DI, we'd probably do a blend of polyester and aramid. Then if you wanted, I'm taking the next step up, I just bought the 50-footer, I want to compete in the Marblehead race and I want to try to win it, we'd probably do a blend of Spectra, aramid, and carbon. Then if you took it to the next level, Drew, I just bought a 52, TP52, I want to go do the GL circuit.
I get it.
Yeah, I want to do the GL circuit, we'd probably build a sail out of mostly carbon fiber.
Okay.
So right through the whole, right from the 30-foot cruiser to the 60-foot racer, depending on the application, we just blend different fibers into the and then we build the sail slightly different as well.
So before you move to last block that we'll talk about future,
Yep.
I still want to explore about maintenance.
Yep.
If I got this right,
Yep.
I have a theory about $3 savings and $30,000 savings.
Yep.
And the theory is sometimes you walk 2 more blocks or 3 more blocks because the coffee is $3 cheaper in the other place.
Yep.
But if you buy something that's important for you, like a sail for your boat,
Yep.
if you call Drew North Sales in advance and
Yep.
spend time not order new things, but understand your needs, understand what you really want to take from that,
Of course.
maybe you can invest better your money. And
Yeah.
it's a little more expensive, but in the end, 10 years in long path is going to be a better investment.
Better
So
investment.
don't go to the website only order something. Call you in advance and understand what you can do for the boat, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, I completely agree with that. I think getting a hold of a North Sales expert, whether you're in Nova Scotia, anywhere in Canada or North America or globally, we're a global company, and working with your needs, we'll find out what is best for your needs. There's also in terms of pricing, like, we sell a premium product and we bring a premium service. So we're usually usually at the same or more than a competitor's sale. But we do have seasonal savings. So something we've started to do at North Sales is capacity savings. So what we do is when people are out on the water not thinking about purchasing sails, or in the fall after the sailing season when everyone's putting things away in North America, other than Florida and a few other nice warm places, we actually give incentives for people to purchase sails to help keep our capacity up in our manufacturing facilities. So I would recommend reach out to me if you don't need a sail tomorrow for the big race that you want to win. You're thinking about long term, we can talk about what cloth you need, what your budget is, what your plan is, what the cost of the sails would be, and then when a good time for you to purchase this to save a few dollars.
And keep it realistic as well, because
Yep.
sometimes they think I can invest the whole money I can because they're going to be a winner because of the new sales.
Yep.
Base it on your experience. The sales is important, it's the engine of a boat.
Yes,
But
exactly.
your skills sometimes is important as well. So
Yeah.
it's better to talk with an expert, understand and set your expectations, receive a material that's going to be good for you, your level of sailing. I think that's the point.
Yep.
Because as a beginner, maybe I can have the best sail possible, but I will not have the same performance as you that's been doing this forever.
Yep.
So you can now invest what you need for your level and just progress later. Right?
Exactly. And with North Sales, we're a global company. So the nice thing is there's so many of them. We all kind of work together. So there's so many experts out there, and there's so many different types of boats and styles of boats and everything. So you could bring probably a boat that has never been into Canada, and then I would reach out, say if it's from like Norway, I'd reach out to the guy in Norway who probably sailed it since he was 6 and his grandfather owned one, and we could ask him on, what type of sails do you think you need, what size of sails, what do you think is works, and even questions down to rigging and stuff. Like, we have a vast group of resources with North Sales, and it's past just the sailmaking side of things. North Technology Group owns rigging companies and spar companies, and there's a lot of people that I could reach out to if I don't have the answer, I could find someone that does.
So I want to go for the last question, but before, I want to ask you about maintenance.
Yep.
Do you have any basic tips for maintenance according with the materials I have in my sail?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is making sure that the sails get off the boat in the wintertime. Okay. When they're on the boat, make sure they're furled up inside your cover. Do not, I guess we can start there. So the first thing is, especially in the summer sailing season, the thing that breaks down sails is flogging and sun. So one thing I'm never going to tell you is not use your sails because the sun's going to hit them, right? That's why you have a sails, to put them up and use them. But if you leave them stored out in the sun without a sail cover on, so on a mainsail, you fold it up and you usually put it around your boom, and then you put a mainsail cover on. On your head sail, if you have hanks, you'll take it down and you've got to fold it up and put it away. But a lot of people have furlers these days, racers and cruisers. Yeah, right. So what you need to do is make sure you have a sacrificial cover along the leech in the foot of your sail. Or you need to have a sock, like a fabric sock that you would hook onto your spinnaker halyard and go around the sail. Mm-hmm. So that what happens is the sun eats away these sail covers, whether on the sail or covered by the sail cover, instead of your sails. Sail covers are a lot less expensive than sails, I can guarantee you that.
UV light, you're gonna eat your sail.
Yeah, eat your sail, exactly. And then past that, once, say you want to make sure that you store your sails somewhere that's dry. We have a storage facility and a winter storage facility program here at North Sales. I always recommend people to do that. The nice thing about that is we actually pull them out and check them over. So not only do we store them for you, but we make sure that they're ready for the next season. Last thing you want to do in Nova Scotia in a short sailing season like this is say, oh, I'll deal with that next spring, and then spring rolls around and you completely forgot about that little issue. You go out sailing and your sail ends up failing. Yep. And then you're without a sail, or your sail's in the loft getting repaired when you could be out sailing. And usually when you damage a sail, the next week is sun every day and good breeze. Yeah, so I think in servicing, and another thing is get your sail into a loft. Probably, a newer sail every couple years, but do it before you start seeing it break down. So okay. A lot of times people will bring a sail into a loft because something is broken. But that is like I always use this example. So when you go in, I'm not much of a car guy. I enjoy cars, I enjoy trucks, but I would never know how many kilometers I would need to do an oil change off the top of my head. Like I'd probably forget. And I have a nice little sticker up in the corner of my car. It says, come back to Toyota at 124,000 kilometers. That's what it's saying right now. And that sticker's not on your sail. It doesn't say come back after 60 hours of use. How many, and you don't know how many hours of use you're using your sail. You don't have like a clicker on the sail. So that's where you can kind of end up using it a little more than you should, and before you service it, and then something breaks down, and then the sail becomes not usable. So getting this, it's a dynamic product. It's always moving as long as it's up. So get it into a sail loft, I would say every 2 years, if not every year. And even if it's just a check over, whatever you spend on that $50, $100 is gonna, you be able to spend the whole summer on the water with no questions or issues. I think gives you you'll probably sleep a little better.
Perfect. Yeah. So I promise you is the last question.
Yeah, no problem at all.
So first of all, I would like to think about what's the next for you, man, in the loft. So what's the future for North Sails now that you are leading?
Yeah, I think just continuing to support and grow the sailing community here in Nova Scotia. From the grassroots of junior sailing to right through to the cruising. I think, there's amazing cruising grounds here, either local cruisers or even and supporting them and servicing them, to international cruisers that are coming up here to check out Nova Scotia. I think the infrastructure here in Nova Scotia for boat yards have really kind of taken a step. East River and the Lunenburg shipyard here, who's run by Dave Mosier and Brad Bootlier and Mike Wilson over at East River. They've kind of really allowed, bigger vessels to come up here into Nova Scotia. The racing scene, I think, is always going to be pretty predominant here in Nova Scotia just due to the heritage of sailing. Cool. Chester Race Week, and Charlottetown Race Week are kind of two staples. Charlottetown Race Week is kind of like the little brother, but if you get up there, it's a great event, a lot of fun. The island people are just amazing. They're super organized over there. The racing's always fun, a little bit of current, a little bit of seaweed. But, the good sailing, the good organization, the race committee kind of makes up for that. Chester Race Week is definitely the pinnacle. I have reached out to as many yacht clubs as I can to go do talks. I've reached out to sailing schools to see if I can support them. I donated sails, or I helped subsidize the cost of some sails to the Mobility Cup last year that was held in Lunenburg. So if you are part of, a sailing school, sailing center, yacht club, and you're looking for ways to continue to grow the sport and support your sailing community, please reach out. Reach out to the Loft here. Reach out to me, Drew Mitchell. I'd love to chat with you and see how we can support, the sailing in Nova Scotia, continue to build on this great sport and great foundation that we have had for 100 plus years.
I want to add this in the show notes as well, in the video, but how do people can reach at you and sail? North Sails Atlantic and Drew Mitchell. Yeah,
so if you ever do want to get a hold of me, it's you can always reach me at drew.mitchell@northsails.com. You can always give the Loft a call at 902-634-3343. And you can always if you send me an email, I'll always reply, and we can always get on a phone call. So my phone's always on. I might not be able to answer on the first ring, but if I do miss your phone call, I will get back to you. But feel free to reach out with any question. And as I said, even if it's not sailmaking related, if it's in the sailing industry or the water industry, give me a call. If I can't answer the question, I'm pretty sure I'll find someone that can.
Thank you very much for your time, man. It was a pleasure to learn everything you told me. I have to digest some of that information a bit, but I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, great day.
You're good with the camera, man.